Giana Westbrook reached for the elevator button at the exact same time a calloused hand brushed hers, and just like that, her world tilted. "Oh, sorry," the man said, pulling his hand back quickly. His voice was rough but kind. He was holding a little boy on one hip, a worn backpack strapped across his chest. "You go first," she smiled, stepping back. We pressed it at the same time. The elevator pinged open. He looked surprised when she didn't rush in ahead of him like most people in this building did. Instead, she held the door open and waited. He adjusted his grip on the boy and stepped inside. "Thank you," he said, nodding politely. "Come on, Westin, say thanks." The little boy yawned and mumbled, "Thanks." Gianna's heart did something strange. She wasn't used to it being noticed for anything other than her last name or her net worth. But this man hadn't looked at her designer coat or her heels. He barely looked at her at all. He was focused on his son. She stepped in, the elevator closing behind them. "He's adorable," the man chuckled softly. "You say that now, wait until he throws a tantrum in the cereal aisle." Giana laughed. "I've seen worse in boardrooms." He glanced at her for the first time. There was something in his eyes, exhaustion maybe, but also this quiet resilience. He had dark brown hair that curled slightly at the ends, a shadow of stubble, and eyes the color of stormy skies. "You work around here." "Something like that," she said, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. He didn't press. She liked that. "I'm Nolan Ashford," he said after a beat. "We just moved in on the 7th floor. It's not much, but it's something." She looked at the backpack stuffed to the brim, the duct-taped stroller peeking from behind his shoulder. "It's a start." "Yeah," Nolan said, his voice quieter. "It is." The elevator stopped. He shifted Westin in his arms. "Well, this is us." She hesitated before holding the door open again. "I'm Giana. Welcome to the building." Nolan smiled, really smiled this time. Lines formed around his eyes when he did, and something about it made her chest ache. "Nice to meet you, Giana." They stepped out, and she let the doors close behind them. She didn't know why her heart was racing like that. She'd met 1,000 men in her life, CEOs, politicians, royalty even. But none of them had looked at her the way Nolan did, or rather, hadn't. He hadn't looked at her like a billionaire. He hadn't looked at her like anything other than a person. And somehow, that made her feel more seen than she ever had. The next morning, she saw them again. Nolan was at the corner bodega, crouched down in front of Westin, trying to decide between two brands of cereal. "We can't get both, bud," he was saying. "One or the other." Giana stood frozen in the aisle. Westin pointed. "The Stars one." "All right." Nolan stood and placed it in the basket. He didn't notice her until she stepped closer. "You're really making him choose between Stars and marshmallows," she teased. Nolan turned, startled, then grinned. "Tough parenting decisions." She looked down at the basket. There wasn't much, just cereal, milk, a few bananas, and mac and cheese. "Doing some shopping," he nodded. "Just grabbing a few things before I head to work. I start a job today. Construction site up on 11th. Congrats." "Thanks." He looked down at Westin. "We've been bouncing around a bit. Finally got something lined up." Giana tried not to let her heart twist. "Do you have someone to watch him?" my neighbor's daughter offered. "She's 17 and home for the summer, just for a few hours till I'm back." Westin tugged on his dad's sleeve. "Can we get juice?" Nolan looked at the shelf. "How much is it?" Giana didn't wait. She grabbed a bottle and handed it to Westin. "My treat." Nolan's brows furrowed. "You don't have to, it's juice," she said gently. "Let me spoil him a little." There was a beat of silence, then he nodded. "Thanks, Giana." She didn't say "you're welcome." She didn't need to. That night, she couldn't stop thinking about him, the way he looked at Westin with so much quiet love, the way he hadn't flinched from hard work, the way he hadn't asked for help, not once. She sat by the floor-to-ceiling windows of her penthouse, sipping wine, the city glittering below her. Her assistant had called 3 times. Her CFO had emailed twice. She ignored them all. She didn't feel like Giana Westbrook, the billionaire, tonight. She felt like a woman who'd met someone real for the first time in a long time. A week passed. She saw them again at the elevator. Westin was wearing a superhero cape made from a towel, and Nolan looked like he'd barely slept. "Rough day?" she asked as they stepped in. "Rough week," Nolan said, rubbing his face. "But he got invited to a birthday party down the hall, so I guess we're officially residents." "That's a win," he looked at her. "You always dress like this." She glanced at her tailored coat and heels. "Bad habit." You look like you belong in a magazine. She raised a brow. Are you flirting with me? Nolan flushed. No, I mean maybe, Giana laughed. I'll allow it. Westin tugged on her coat. Are you coming to the party? Giana hesitated. I wasn't invited. You are now, Nolan said, her heart fluttered. The party was chaos, kids everywhere, frosting on the walls, balloons flying, someone's dog barking from the kitchen. Giana stood awkwardly near the hallway, holding a juice pouch someone had handed her. Nolan approached, 2 plates of cake in hand. You look terrified. I'm not exactly great with birthday parties. He held out a plate. Eat, it helps. She took it. Thanks. They sat on the floor, backs against the wall, watching Westin run around in his cape. You do all this alone? She asked. Yeah, he looked down. His mom left when he was 2, said she wasn't cut out for it. I'm sorry, he shrugged. We're doing all right. I just want him to have a stable life, you know, she nodded. You're a good dad. He looked at her then, really looked. You're not like most people around here, she smiled. That's a good thing, right? Yeah, he said softly. It is. She didn't know what came over her, but she reached out and touched his hand. He didn't pull away. Later that night, as she walked back to her penthouse, she heard Westin's voice echoing in her head. Are you coming to the party? She had. And now she wasn't sure she'd be able to walk away, because the poor dad with the soft eyes and the strong hands had no idea she was falling. Hard. You're early. The voice caught Nolan off guard as he stepped out of the stairwell with Westin perched sleepily on his shoulder. Giana was leaning against the wall near the mailboxes, her hair twisted up, a soft cashmere sweater hugging her frame. She didn't look like the kind of woman who waited around for anyone, but there she was waiting. I didn't take the elevator, he said, adjusting Westin as the boy stirred. Didn't want to wake up the whole floor with his post-nap meltdown. She walked beside him as he headed toward their door. You always take the stairs. Only on days that end in Y. That made her laugh, low and warm. You ever let anyone help you? He glanced at her, keys in hand. Depends on the offer. I brought dinner, she said, lifting the paper bag she was holding. He stopped short. You didn't have to do that. I didn't ask if I had to, she said, stepping past him and nudging the door open when he unlocked it. I just figured spaghetti beats cereal. Inside, Westin slumped onto the couch with a groggy whine and promptly wrapped himself in a fleece blanket. The apartment was small, but clean. A stack of library books sat on the coffee table, and a hand-drawn calendar with construction schedules and school events was taped above the kitchenette sink. Nolan set his keys down and turned to her. You didn't have to come all the way up here just to feed us. I didn't, she replied, unpacking the food. I came up because I wanted to. He watched her lift out a Tupperware of pasta and a container of garlic bread, then pull a bottle of sparkling lemonade from her bag. Where'd you find the time? He asked, folding his arms. I canceled a dinner with a hedge fund director who kept calling me kiddo. This seemed like a better use of my night, he blinked. Hedge fund, she froze for a beat, then recovered. Old friend of my family's. I don't like being told what my priorities should be. He didn't push. Instead, he grabbed plates and forks. Well, I'm not saying no. They sat on the floor again, legs crossed, the food between them. Westin mumbled something about superhero dreams from the couch and rolled over, fast asleep. So, Nolan said between bites, what do you do? Giana chewed carefully before answering. I invest in ideas that don't get their fair shot. He tilted his head. Like a venture capitalist, something like that. She sipped her lemonade, but I like to think I'm more selective. I don't chase numbers, I back people. He studied her. You don't sound like most people I've met in finance. That's probably because I'm not. There was a pause. Outside, sirens wailed faintly in the distance. Inside, there was only the soft hum of the fridge and the occasional clink of forks. You ever think about starting over? She asked suddenly. He looked down at his plate. Every time I walk past a playground I can't afford to take him to. Why haven't you left the city? He shrugged. He was born here. I don't want to make him start over just because things got tough. We've moved enough. Something in her expression shifted. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small box wrapped in plain white paper. I saw this and thought of him. Nolan frowned. You didn't have to, I know. He opened it slowly. Inside was a hardcover children's book, The Boy Who Found the Moon. The cover was deep blue with silver foil stars that shimmered under the lights. I read it when I was a kid, she said. He might like it. Nolan's voice was quiet. No one's ever done stuff like this for us. I'm not doing it for you, she said softly. I'm doing it for him, she stood. I should get going. I'll walk you down. She looked at him. You don't have to, I want to. The elevator ride was silent until halfway down. You ever babysit? He asked. She turned to him, surprised. Excuse me? I mean, Westin has a school performance next week. It's a daytime thing, and I don't know anyone who could sit through it without falling asleep or checking their phone. She lifted her chin. Are you saying I look like someone with patience? I'm saying I trust you not to make it about yourself. That silenced her. No one had ever said that to her before. I'll be there, she said. He nodded once, then stepped back as the elevator doors opened. She walked out into the lobby, heels clicking softly on the tile. But this time, she didn't feel distant from the world beneath her. She felt grounded. The day of the school performance, the auditorium was packed with folding chairs and distracted parents. Giana slipped in quietly, dressed in jeans and a soft gray sweater, and found Nolan standing near the back, nervously checking the time. You made it, he said, surprised. I said I would. He gave her a quick nod, then pointed toward the stage. He's third from the left. Westin stood in a line of kids, wearing a cardboard moon on his chest and a lopsided grin. When the music started, he sang off key, but with so much heart that Giana felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes. She glanced at Nolan. He wasn't watching the performance. He was watching his son like the world began and ended with him. After the show, Westin ran straight into Nolan's arms, the cardboard moon crumpling between them. Then he spotted Giana. You came. I wouldn't miss it. He hugged her legs before darting off to grab a cookie from the refreshment table. Nolan leaned closer. He's never had anyone besides me show up for things like this. Giana didn't respond right away. She was watching Westin laugh with another kid, crumbs on his chin, joy on his face. Then she turned to Nolan. I could get used to showing up. He looked at her, something unreadable in his eyes. You sure you want to? I've never been more sure of anything. And in that moment, surrounded by juice boxes and paper crafts, Giana realized something terrifying and thrilling all at once. She wasn't just falling, she was already his. Giana sat at the conference table, staring at the projection screen while her CFO droned on about quarterly returns. Numbers blurred together, margins, projections, capital flow. None of it held her attention. Not today. Not when Nolan's voice from the night before still echoed in her mind. I trust you not to make it about yourself. No one had ever said anything like that to her. Not her board. Not her so-called friends. Certainly not any of the men who'd tried to impress her with lavish hotels or Rolexes. Nolan had looked her straight in the eye, said those words like they were fact, and didn't seem to care whether she was impressed or not. She wasn't used to being seen past her last name. Her assistant handed her another folder. The Singapore pitch still needs your final sign-off. And the gala guest list needs review by noon. Giana nodded absently. Push the gala list, I'll handle Singapore first. The assistant hesitated. You're still attending the gala Saturday, right? She blinked. What? The Westbrook Foundation's annual event. You're the face of it. Right. That. The dress fittings, the donor speeches, the endless stream of forced smiles. Yes, I'll be there, she said, though her voice lacked conviction. As her assistant left, Giana reached for her phone. She hesitated, then tapped Nolan's number. He'd given it to her days ago when she said she'd be at Westin's school event. She hadn't used it since. He answered on the second ring. Hey. Hi, she said, voice softer than usual. I know it's short notice, but do you have plans Saturday evening? There was a pause. Define plans. There's a charity gala. I have to go. I'd rather not go alone. He didn't respond right away. You're inviting me to something black tie. I'm inviting you because I want you there. I don't own a tux. I'll take care of it. I don't know which fork to use. Then don't use one. He chuckled, low and warm. You're serious? Deadly, he exhaled. All right. I'm in. When she hung up, something fluttered in her chest. Not nerves, not anticipation, something closer to hope. Saturday arrived with brutal efficiency. By the time the car pulled in front of Nolan's building, Giana was already inside, dressed in midnight blue silk, her hair in soft waves. She hadn't sent the driver, she'd come herself. When Nolan stepped onto the curb, her breath caught. He wore the tux she'd sent earlier that afternoon, but it wasn't the tailoring that struck her. It was the way he carried himself, nervous, yes, but upright, proud. Westin stood beside him in tiny pajamas, waving with a juice box in hand. A teenage girl hovered behind him, holding a remote and a board game. "Thanks for watching him," Giana said to the girl. She shrugged. "He promised me snacks and no bedtime rules." "I'm good." Nolan climbed into the car beside Giana, tugging at his collar. "This thing's choking me." "You look incredible," she said. He turned his head. "You look unreal." "I'll take that as a compliment." The gala was held at a historic library on Fifth Avenue, transformed into an opulent dream. Crystal chandeliers, live strings, candlelit tables. The kind of event where billionaires whispered deals over champagne and pretended to care about causes they barely remembered funding. Giana stepped inside with Nolan at her side, and every head turned. She felt it immediately, the subtle shift in attention, the curious glances, the veiled surprise. Nolan noticed too. His entire body stiffened. "Is this your world?" he asked under his breath. "Not really," she murmured. "It's my obligation." A donor approached, all polished teeth and perfect cufflinks. "Giana, darling, you've been hiding." She kept her smile polite. "I've been busy." The man's eyes flicked to Nolan. "And this is—" Giana didn't flinch. "My guest." Nolan's jaw ticked, but he extended his hand. "Nolan Ashford." The donor clasped it briefly, then turned back to Giana. "We must discuss the Ghana proposal later." The numbers were ambitious. "We'll talk after the auction," she said coolly, guiding Nolan away. He leaned in as they walked. "You didn't have to lie. Guest sounds like code." "I didn't lie," she said. "You're here with me." That's all anyone needs to know. They reached the balcony above the main hall, quieter and dimly lit. Nolan looked out over the crowd. "They're all looking at you like you're some kind of royalty." "I'm used to it." He turned to her. "Why'd you bring me here?" "Because I wanted you to see the part of my life I don't usually let anyone into." He studied her face for a long moment. "You're not like them." "No," she agreed, "but I used to be." She didn't elaborate. She didn't need to. The clinking glasses, the whispered deals, the fake laughter, it all told the story for her. Nolan stepped closer. "You're not pretending with me, are you?" "Never." He reached for her hand, his fingers rough against her skin. "You could have had anyone in this room hanging on your every word." "I didn't want them." His thumb brushed her knuckles. "You wanted me." She nodded. He leaned in slowly, giving her room to pull away. She didn't. The kiss was soft, unhurried. But it carried heat that curled low in her stomach and lit something dangerous in her chest. When they pulled apart, he whispered, "Tell me this isn't just a night for you. Tell me you didn't bring me here to make a point." She shook her head. "I brought you here because I haven't been able to stop thinking about you, and because this world doesn't matter to me half as much as you do." He exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for days. Below, someone tapped a glass to announce the auction was about to begin. Giana didn't move. Neither did Nolan. He looked at her like the rest of the room had vanished, and for the first time in a long time, she believed it had. Nolan opened the apartment door with one arm while balancing a paper bag in the other. "We're back," he called out, stepping inside as Westin ran past him, already tugging off his shoes. Giana looked up from the couch, where she'd been helping Westin's babysitter fold plastic dinosaurs into a toy organizer. "Perfect timing," she said, standing. The babysitter gave a quick wave, grabbed her tote bag, and slipped out the door, leaving the three of them alone. Nolan exhaled as he set the bag on the counter. "I picked up those dumplings from that place you mentioned near Delancey. Hope I got the right ones." "You did," she said, walking over and grabbing plates. "The ones with the sesame glaze and the scallion noodles," Westin insisted. "I did not," Westin shouted from the floor, buried under a blanket fort. "You wanted them too," Nolan grinned and started unpacking. "He's right, I was craving them." Giana set the table, glancing at Nolan as he moved around the kitchen like he'd done it 1,000 times. "You're getting comfortable." He paused mid-reach. "Is that a bad thing?" She shook her head. "It's the opposite." They ate together, the three of them, as the rain tapped gently against the windows. Westin told stories about a dragon that lived under the school cafeteria, and Giana listened with her chin in one hand, laughing when Nolan added dramatic sound effects. Every now and then, her eyes would drift to Nolan's face, watching the way he looked at his son like he was the whole world. When Westin finally fell asleep mid-sentence, curled up on the couch with a book still in his hands, Nolan stood and gently covered him with a worn blanket. Giana waited until they were alone in the kitchen before she said, "I've been thinking about something." He leaned against the fridge, arms crossed. "That sounds dangerous." She didn't smile. "You know I can't keep doing this halfway." He tilted his head. "Doing what? Being in your life like a guest, or like someone visiting when it's convenient. That's not what I want." His expression shifted. "Then what do you want?" "I want to be here when Westin loses his first tooth. I want to help with his science projects and show up for all the things that matter. I want you to stop pretending like there's a line I'm not allowed to cross." He looked at her for a long time, then said quietly, "It's not about lines. It's about not screwing this up. You're not. I'm not just protecting him, Giana. I'm protecting you too." She stepped closer. "I don't need protection. I need honesty." He hesitated, then said, "I've never had someone like you in my life. I don't know how to make sense of it. I've spent years trying to make rent and raise a kid without falling apart. You walk in and suddenly the world feels bigger than I ever thought it could be." "You don't have to make sense of it," she said. "You just have to let it happen." He reached for her hand. "You're not afraid, terrified," she admitted. "But I've spent my whole life building walls, you and Westin. You made me want to tear all of them down." He pulled her into a hug, one arm wrapped tightly around her back, the other still holding her hand. His breath was warm against her neck. "I don't want to do any of this without you anymore." She nodded into his shoulder. "Then don't." They stayed like that until the rain softened and the city lights outside the window blurred into gold. The next morning, Giana made a call. By noon, a moving company had arrived at her penthouse. She didn't take everything, just what mattered. A few books, a framed photo of her parents from before the headlines, her mother's old piano music, a collection of spices she refused to part with. The rest stayed behind. Later that day, she stood in the hallway outside Nolan's apartment with a single suitcase. She didn't ring the bell. She just waited. He opened the door before she knocked. "You serious?" "I'm not moving in," she said. "I'm staying here until I find something close by. I want to be part of your life, not just visit it." He stepped aside, letting her pass. "I should warn you, the plumbing makes weird noises and Westin's obsessed with waffles." "Perfect," she said. 2 weeks later, they sat on a park bench as Westin climbed a jungle gym nearby. The sun was setting, casting long shadows over the playground. "I got a call yesterday," Nolan said, watching the horizon. She turned to him. "From who?" "A friend from the site. He's starting a small contracting company. Asked if I'd join as a partner." Her eyes lit up. "Are you going to?" I told him I'd think about it. "I wanted to ask you first." She raised an eyebrow. "Me? You've built empires. I figured you'd have an opinion." She looked at him, her voice soft. "Do you want it?" He nodded. "Yeah, I do." "Then do it. I'll still be here when you get home." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Her breath hitched. "What is that?" He opened it slowly. Inside was a simple ring, a silver band with a single deep sapphire in the center. "I don't have a yacht. I don't have a mansion. But I have this, and I have you, and that's more than I ever thought I'd be lucky enough to ask for." She blinked, stunned. "Are you seriously proposing to me in a public park?" He laughed. "It's where the important things happen." She looked at the ring, then at him. "It's perfect. So is that a yes?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, she stood, pulled him up, and kissed him in front of the whole park. When they broke apart, she whispered, "Yes." Westin, from across the playground, shouted, "Are you getting married?" Nolan called back, "Eventually." The boy cheered and dangled upside down from the monkey bars. Later that night, Giana sat at the small kitchen table, the ring on her finger, her feet tucked under Nolan's. Westin had fallen asleep beside them, curled into a blanket with a comic book still open. Nolan leaned his head against hers. "You never told me what made you press the elevator button that day," she smiled. "I was running late and forgot my coffee. I almost turned back." "Glad you didn't. So am I." They didn't need penthouses or limousines or boardrooms anymore. All they needed was this: a button, a boy. And a love that neither of them saw coming, but both had been waiting for their whole lives. The morning sun streamed through the window of the new apartment. casting light across a half-finished puzzle on the coffee table and a row of tiny superhero masks lined up on the windowsill. Giana turned the page of a contract, glasses low on her nose, coffee cooling beside her untouched. The apartment still smelled faintly of paint and citrus cleaner, the scent of a fresh beginning. Nolan came in from the balcony, barefoot, hair still damp from a shower. He paused when he saw her, then crossed the room and leaned against the back of her chair. "You've been staring at that page for 20 minutes. I'm reviewing a startup proposal. They're building prosthetics for kids using biodegradable material. It's brilliant, but their financials are a mess." He glanced at the folder. "That's your thing, right? Turning messes into things that shine." She closed the folder and looked up at him. "I'm thinking of stepping back," he blinked. "From work, not completely, but I want to choose what matters. I've spent years building things for people I never met. I'm ready to build something I can actually touch." He slid into the chair across from her. "What does that look like?" She shrugged. "Maybe helping smaller businesses, local things. Starting a program through the foundation that focuses on single-parent entrepreneurs. People like you." His brow lifted. "I'm not great with spreadsheets. You don't have to be, that's my job." She reached across and laced their fingers together. "I want to do something that feels rooted. Something Westin can be proud of." Nolan's expression softened. "You already have him wrapped around your finger. He told his teacher you're going to teach him to drive." She laughed. "He's 6. He's ambitious." The sound of tiny feet padded down the hall, followed by a loud yawn. Westin appeared, wrapped in a fleece blanket with one sock missing. "Are we making pancakes?" Nolan ruffled his hair. "That depends. Are you helping or supervising?" Westin pointed dramatically. "Supervisor." Giana stood and scooped him into her arms. "Then you better be ready to give very specific directions." They made pancakes as a team of 3, batter ending up on the floor, and one slightly burnt attempt being declared super crispy and cool by Westin. They ate at the kitchen island, syrup sticking to their fingers, and Nolan occasionally brushing flour from Giana's cheek. Later that afternoon, the 3 of them walked through the neighborhood farmers market. Giana carried a tote bag filled with apples and Nolan pushed Westin on his collapsible scooter. A vendor called out to them by name, offering a sample of warm cider. "There's a house for sale on the next block," Nolan said casually, handing Giana a paper cup. She sipped, then looked up. "You thinking about upgrading already?" "Not a mansion, just something with a real yard, a tree he can climb, a place that's ours from the ground up." She slowed her steps. "I like the sound of that." He nodded toward the corner where a small white house with green shutters stood, a for sale sign tucked behind a bush. "You want to see it?" She glanced at Westin, who was trying to race a pigeon. "If he agrees to mow the lawn," Nolan grinned. "We'll put it in his contract." That evening, they toured the house. The walls were bare, the kitchen needed work, and the backyard was wildly overgrown. But the light in the front room was golden and soft, and the hallway echoed with the sound of Westin's laughter as he ran from room to room. Nolan leaned against the doorframe of what would be Westin's room. "You see it too, don't you?" Giana nodded. "It's not perfect." "Exactly." They made an offer the next morning. The weeks that followed were filled with paint samples, donated furniture, and more takeout than they cared to admit. Westin helped pick colors for his room, bright green and blue, and Giana set up a small home office by a window that overlooked the garden. Nolan installed a tire swing himself, refusing to hire anyone else, and only fell off the ladder once. The day they moved in, Giana stood in the middle of the empty living room holding a galvanized bucket of daisies. Nolan came in behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "This is home," he said. She leaned back against him. "It always was. We just didn't have an address for it yet." They hosted a small gathering that weekend. A few neighbors, Westin's teacher, and the construction crew Nolan had partnered with. Giana wore jeans and bare feet, serving lemonade and pie while Westin gave a tour of his room to anyone who'd listen. As the sun dipped behind the trees, Nolan brought her out to the front porch. "I never thought I'd end up here," he said, his voice quiet. "With you, with any of this." She turned to him. "Why not?" "Because I thought love like this only happened to other people." She brushed her fingers along his jaw. "Then let's be other people for the rest of our lives." He kissed her under the porch light, slow and certain, as fireflies blinked across the yard and Westin shouted something about catching one in a jar. Months later, Giana stood in front of a room filled with entrepreneurs, mothers, teachers, and builders. She wore a simple navy dress and held a microphone with steady hands. "This isn't about giving back," she said. "It's about showing up. It's about building something real. We're not here to offer favors. We're here to invest in futures that deserve to exist." Nolan stood at the back, holding Westin's hand. He watched her with the same look he had the day she brought dumplings to his tiny apartment, a mix of awe and quiet certainty that she was exactly who she said she was. Afterward, she joined them near the exit. Westin reached for her immediately. "You sounded like a superhero." She knelt. "I had a good coach." Nolan pulled her close, his voice low. "You're changing lives. I changed mine first." They walked out together, no limousines, no photographers, just three people bound not by circumstance but by choice, and that was worth more than anything money could ever buy. They didn't need a ceremony to know what they were. They didn't need headlines to validate it. They had laughter in the kitchen, muddy shoes at the door, and the kind of love that grew wild and deep, like roots under the house they now called home, and they had each other forever.